Hello, hello, hello. Come on in, shut the door, have a seat, have a cocktail. Welcome to another edition of the Brooklyn Baby Podcast with me, your host, Charlene Sabb. And you know how this goes. I'm always going to ask, did you have a good week? Hopefully a productive week, a blessed week, and all that great positive stuff, because that's all we're trying to do. You know what? We go through so much day to day, week to week, hour by hour, and I just want this podcast to be uplifting, even though we're going to hit some topics which might not be uplifting in nature, but we're pretty much trying to walk ourselves through solutions and just a soundboard, safe space, because the topic today is not a happy one. It's about the topic of death. And I know all my other podcasts are usually relationship and stuff of that nature, but this one is probably going to be the darkest and the most emotional because of the topic in and of itself. And I felt propelled and compelled to tackle this topic of death because it hit me personally this year. For those of you who do not know, my mom passed away earlier this year. It was February 19th to be exact. And I've alluded to and mentioned her passing in past podcast episodes. And I just want to address the issue of death, talk about it, and move on from it. And I want to say I appreciate everyone who checked in on my family and I, my dad, myself, my son, my sister. I appreciate everyone who checked in on us to see if we're good. And I just came to the point where I had to tell people politely and respectfully, we're good. And to me, I don't want to keep talking about it. It happened. Was it expected? Yes and no. And I've mentioned in past podcasts, yes, my mother had been sick with mental illness since the day I was born. No one knew she had this condition until she gave birth to me. Because when she gave birth to my sister, before my dad and mom met 2 years prior, I guess no one knew what was going on with her. But then, people have come to my dad and in recent years and said, well, when your mom had your sister, people who lived near her, who knew her, said, that she seemed like she was going through something mental, but it was not diagnosed. It was not looked after. So here we go. So when I was born in 1971, in the same hospital my dad was born, in the same hospital where I was born, where my dad worked. Let me correct that. Yeah, I was born in Maimonides Medical Center. It's the largest Jewish hospital in Brooklyn, New York. And when I was born, my dad was in charge and running the blood bank. And he has a history of being a phlebotomist, blah, blah, blah. But then when I was born, he was actually in charge of the blood bank. He would also do tests on blood and everything like that. And then when the HIV AIDS hit society, then he was actually testing blood for HIV, and he actually gave me my own first HIV test when I was pregnant with my son Michael, ironically, because I know news hit that Magic Johnson tested positive. I know Cookie was pregnant with her son EJ, and I was pregnant at the same time. It was like October of 1991 when the news hit that when he came out in a press conference to say he has HIV, I said, Dad, let me have a test too, because I know I'm giving birth soon, like Cookie's about to give birth. And, I wasn't always the safest, and I'm just being honest. And I said, I'm having a baby. Let's get tested. Give me test. So my dad had the paraphernalia at our home in Brooklyn to take my blood. He had the syringes, the needles, the tubes, everything he needed. And he took my blood one morning in October 1991, and he said, I'll have your results before I come home, or when I come home from work from the hospital, after picking up your mother from work. And took my blood that morning because I was off from school for 2 years from UVA, University of Virginia, to give birth to my child and be with my child for a full year, taken off from college, 2 years taken off from college, just to go back to UVA to finish my remaining 2 years of college. Luckily, UVA had family housing across the street from where, they had different sections of Copley family housing, but the section where I was living was like across the street, a stone throw away from where the University of Virginia men's basketball played, from that arena. Anyway, so he took my blood October 1991, had my results, of course, negative, and had my results by the time he came home with my mom from work that night. So anyway, my point is, my mom, back to my mom, we did, so when I was born, she went from the psych ward, well, the labor ward to the psych ward. And then it became discovered that she had mental illness. It was not postpartum, it was mental illness. And the doctor told my dad, well, if you try to have more children, we could bring her out this time, but next time we won't. So I can't even imagine how my dad felt. Like, it was supposed to be one of the joyous times of his life, having his own first biological child. I mean, he was a father to my sister and the only father that she acknowledged, even though her biological father tried to come back into her life when she was an adult. And she had to tell his daughter, her half-sister, respectfully, Fred Sapp is the only father that I have. You can tell my dad, our dad, Joe, that I don't want to meet him. So anyway, that's a whole nother topic. So yeah, my dad probably had a lot of stress, because imagine your wife, y'all only been married for 3 years. She gives birth to your first child, her second child, and it's in the hospital where you work. You're not expecting a curveball from life to be thrown at you, and your wife, who you've only been married to for 3 years, but you were dating her for a total of 5 years prior to the marriage. So they were at that point together, 8 years, married for only 3. She goes from the labor ward to the psych ward, and it's the hospital where you work, where you have a supervisor's role. And I never asked my dad. I hope people were very kind and gentle, because sometimes workplaces can be gossip, a cesspool or a petri dish of gossip. So I can only imagine what he went through, having a man having such a prominent role at the hospital and a title, and then such a public traumatic situation takes place with your wife just gave birth, and life throws you a cold curveball, and she has to go to the psych ward. So anyway, so that is the illness that my mother had that most people didn't even know about. To see her, to be at their home, or their homes in New York, and the one that they have here in Raleigh. And I still refer to it as their home, because no matter, even though she passed, it will forever be the home of Freddie and Betty Sapp. Always. I will always refer to it as my parents' home. Their landline number will always be my parents' phone number, because it's something they built and created literally and figuratively together. Anyway, so, I could only imagine what he went through with the trauma of having that happen. So to cut to it, so many people did not realize what she went through, because she would always bounce back. She had great care, a great psychiatrist, nurses. She would be in and out the hospital. Sometimes I would have to start the first day of school with my dad only, because my mom had to go back to a psych ward. I know when I started my first day at this private school I attended, called Berkeley Institute, which is now called the Berkeley Carroll Street School. My dad was the person who took me to preschool and saw me off. I still remember that day. Then when I transferred to another private school from 6th grade, I was at Berkeley from preschool to 5th grade, and then some other students and I transferred because we thought Berkeley was closing. We went to what we felt was even better private school called Pack Collegiate Institute in the prominent Brooklyn Heights section of Brooklyn, right on Geralman Street, off of Court Street, near the Brooklyn courthouses, near downtown Brooklyn, near where my mom worked, near the Brooklyn Bridge, where the famous Brooklyn Heights Promenade is located, and the stone throw away from what's now Dumbo. It wasn't Dumbo back then. But anyway, so she had a great psychiatrist in that area near where my private school was located, near where my sister went to college. Where she went to college was literally right across the street from my private school. So a lot of times my sister would be on lunch break between classes, she would come over and see me if I was on lunch break at my private school, because we could leave campus to go to lunch. We would have lunch together, or if my mother was having her psychiatric appointments with her physician, sometimes she would walk. She would walk with her stilettos down from where she worked to her psychiatric appointments in the neighborhood where my private school was located, in the prestigious Brooklyn Heights section of Brooklyn, where they got beautiful multi-million-dollar brownstones. And I used to love going to little house parties that my classmates would have, because it was like, I came from a nice all brick house in Brooklyn, in East Flatbush section, but these people, their houses at that time, back in the 80s, were $1 million houses, and they're multi-million-dollar houses now. But it was like an experience. So anyway, what I'm trying to get at is my mom, as a result of what she went through, her great Brooklyn Heights psychiatrist put her on lithium. And lithium kept her out of the psych ward for decades. However, unbeknownst to us, we didn't realize till she became an elderly person about 10 years ago, her general practitioner realized it was, even though she had been off the lithium, been on it for for a few decades, maybe 20, 30 years, but been off it probably since she was 50 or 60. But it was already too late, because they found other medications to put her on, but the damage that lithium we now know causes to people with psychiatric issues, it was too late. The damage was done. Her kidneys were already declining, and she had the major hospitalization back in 2020, right before the pandemic. So my point is, do we know? Like I told my closest cousin, we were having a conversation about our parents, and I told her 4 years ago, I said, I don't think my mom has much longer on this earth. After her major hospitalization in 2020 during the pandemic, in which her kidneys officially shut down, she had to officially go on dialysis. So when people ask me, when I think back, rather, or when people ask, was it expected? Yes and no. I knew she was on borrowed time. We knew that. Like I told my cousin 4 years prior to her death, I don't think my mother has much longer, because she was very frail. She didn't look the same. She needed a rolling walker. And then, like, in the last several months prior to her death, she really struggled to walk. And a lot of times, there were times in which my son had to come over and help out and lift her literally up the stairs from the staircase that leads from my parents' home to their garage. When she would come home from appointments, because my dad couldn't lift her. So luckily, Michael would have to be called, and he was available to lift my mother out of my dad's car into their home, taking the garage entryway. And sometimes he had to lift my mom from the house to take the garage entryway and put her into my dad's SUV to take her to her dialysis appointments. That's what ended up happening the last few months of her life, before she had that final hospitalization and going to a skilled nursing facility. Basically about in October of 2023. Yep. So my point is, we knew her kidneys were shutting down, but she was able to live for 4 more years, and then finally, passed away earlier this year in February. So you could never be, even though we knew she was on borrowed time and her time was limited, and I was forever grateful. I always took every day she was around as a gift, because, like I said, she was on borrowed time and she was here much longer than we expected. However, with that being said, I still expected a little more time with her. I would say I was hoping for and really thinking maybe, hopefully, another at least 2 more years. So she just kept declining, especially this past, last year around this time, and a little prior, always having to go to the emergency room for little situations and this, that, and the third, and just every few months, we had to take her to the emergency room, or Her dialysis center would let us know we had to recommend the ambulance to come pick her up because she seemed very weak and frail. Her blood pressure was low, or she was frail, or something, so we were kind of expecting it, but kind of not, if that makes any sense. So you can never be prepared, but in doing so, just have things in order. Luckily, my mom had great life insurance that was in order. So I just say to everyone, just make sure you have life insurance on you, your loved ones. You don't want to have to be in a situation like some people having to scramble. And luckily, my mom and dad have theirs in order. Even things like wills, trusts, different policies, insurance, life insurance. Make sure everything's in order. You know who you want to bequeath certain items to. So again, consult a lawyer for wills, trusts, and stuff like that. Make sure bank accounts have beneficiaries, and if you need to make updates, make sure you have it updated. Just have that component in order. It'll make life a lot easier. And I know when we were dealing with the funeral home, luckily, my dad, as I told you in an earlier podcast, he was drafted, did his 2 years in the military, in the Army, became sharpshooter, military police, and the hospital that I mentioned where he worked, where I was born, where my mother was also hospitalized as well after my birth, they held his job at the hospital. So when he did his 2 years in the Army, prior to meeting my mom, he went back to his job at the hospital. They held it for him. He didn't dodge the draft as he could have, but I think I forgot that they said there was some stipulation where he could have avoided the draft, but he said no, I want to do my duty. I forgot. I can't remember. He said there was some stipulation where I think a doctor said, I can get you out of there if you want not to serve. But I can't remember what he said was the loophole that would have gotten him out of it. I got to ask him about that. But he said, no, I want to do my duty and serve my country. So I commend my dad and salute him for that bravery. He's braver than I am. So that happened. So have everything in order, laid out. So when my mom passed, okay, she's buried in a military cemetery in North Carolina. He knew that he, as a veteran, he would be allocated a burial plot for her and for himself right next to her for free. That knocked off a lot of expenses, and her insurance policy took care of the rest. So, with some leftover money. So that was very good for my dad. So just have things like that in order. If you have a relative who is in the military, you are entitled to, if you choose the route like my dad, for my mom and for himself, to have your loved one buried in a military cemetery, and you don't have to pay that $4,000 to $5,000 plus just for a burial plot. Okay, so that way when you do put your loved one to rest, if you are military or your loved one's military, you don't have to worry about paying at least $4,000 to $5,000 for the hole in the ground they're going to dig for them, the plot. Okay, so just have that in order so you're not scrambling. Seek help. I know there are counselors. There's so many things in place. Seek help if you feel you need it. I'm the type of person. Yeah, they had people in the hospital when we knew her time was limited back in January, February, early February, talking to us about, if you need counseling even after her death. But I knew the way we are, once she's put to rest and the kind of religious and background that we have, we don't want to stew and keep talking about and go to grief counseling or death counseling, because to me, that's just not how we roll. But for people who need it, and if you do roll that way, seek it. It's okay. They have so many things in place. And there's a whole genre of medicine that we didn't even know of. I'm trying to recall the name of the medicine. It's a whole genre that helps people in times like that, before your loved one dies, and even after. Because I even spoke to the doctor from the hospital. I said, this is a whole new genre of medicine. I'm trying to think of what is that genre of medicine that it's a new genre of medicine that helps people uh, decide what they want to do. Do they want hospice care? What kind of care do they want for their loved one who's about to pass away? And they also help people find treatment and counseling. And I'm trying to think of what is that genre of medicine that it's new. And I know the physician that we had with this genre, that the name escapes me, he was a gem. And he even came and met us in the, he called my dad and had me on speakerphone. And his name was Dr. Kettner. He was just a gem. So anyway, they do have this form of medicine. I'm going to try to look it up what it is. And they help people plan for, it's called palliative care. Palliative care. Palliative care is a form of medicine that basically it helps you plan for what do you want to do when your loved one is sick and they're not going to make it. It's an approach aimed at optimizing the quality of life and the suffering that's going to happen with people with different illnesses, often terminal. So they provide the best route for the sick loved one and their families for direction of care that they want to take, as well as providing supports in place for the sick loved one's family. It's called palliative care. And I even said, and I said, wait, my dad, I said, we were talking to this Dr. Kettner in Raleigh. We said, wait a minute, is this a new form of medicine? I said, because we've never heard of this genre of medicine before. He said, yes, Miss Sabb, it is a new form of medicine. I said, well, it's great that this genre or this division of medicine has taken place, because people, the loved one who's in a hospital as well as their family members need this support. So kudos to Dr. Kettner. And I always felt like, I know in life there's racial discrimination and there's unfair treatment for minority people with healthcare, but I must honestly say, the people who've been my parents' caregivers their entire lives, from New York to Raleigh, and even my OBGYN or dentist or my general practitioner, I always felt like great care, top-notch care. They really took their time with me, my parents, my son, we always felt like, and I know some people, unfortunately, that's not their story. They have horrible stories about being mistreated with care and this, that, and the third. But I can't say that that's been our situation. I'm grateful for that. But I will say this as well. It's important also, just make sure that you are good and you seek supports that you need to help you get through, whether even if it's church, praying, having a support group, a good circle of friends to talk to. That's very important to get what you need. But when I tell my people we are okay, we are okay. We're not the type of people, even before all of this, whenever something adverse is happening, we don't like to stew in it and be complainers. We're positive thinkers. I'm not saying I'm going to be chipper or happy all the time, but for the most part, 9 times out of 10, we're happy, we're optimistic, we're bubbly. We turn it over to God and to Christ and to higher powers and to pray, be positive. Because I do believe in positivity of the mind. There were people I know that checked on me, even people I know from high school checking on me, and they would check on me and I would say, oh yeah, I'm on my way to see my mother at the hospital, and they would be telling me, oh, keep me posted on what's going on. And they were also very supportive when she finally passed. So I'm grateful to those people and to people just in our lives. But when I say we are okay, we are okay. And I want people, sometimes it makes people feel worse to just keep asking a person, how are you doing? Because sometimes some people, they mean it meaningfully and trying to be helpful, but then some people have demon spirits. They're just trying to upset you or poke the bear or be microaggressive So some people, they're asking, but they're not really asking because a lot of them have ulterior motive, and they kind of want to see you looking all broken up and crazy and upset. Don't let people have that power. And I'm going to also say sometimes you need to take a break from everything. And it means taking a little vacation, a staycation, um, taking yourself out to dinner, doing something for you, um, a trip by yourself, a trip with family members, a trip with friends, a staycation trip with, if you have a boo or something going on, a significant other or a little lover, a sneaky link, whatever you need to do, just do what you need to do. Okay? It's okay. It's okay. Try to surround yourself with positive, uplifting people, with positive spirits. Buy yourself something special. If you could afford it, if you're not going to get in debt or break the bank, but buy yourself something special. If you want a new vehicle or a new house or new clothes or new shoes or jewelry or whatever, just do something for yourself as long as you can afford it, of course, and don't break the bank or ruin your credit or nothing like that. That could make you feel even worse if you do that. But do something for yourself. Take yourself somewhere that's within your budget, something to make you feel good. Surround yourself with positivity. Surround yourself, because death is a bitch. It's difficult. It's hard. I personally, I told people I don't handle death well, but you know what? I handled it and handling it better than I thought. I was one of those people who really don't go to funerals, and I used to tell people, if I'm at a funeral for one of your loved ones, I must really rock with them and or you. I said, because I'm not one of, some people could just go to funerals and go to repasses and like it's nothing, but for me, no, I can count on two hands how many funerals I've been to in my entire life. Not many, but that I'm sure as you progress and you stay on this earth long enough, if you're blessed to, that is going to change, because people are going to die. That's a part of life. That's part of the circle of life. So basically, have everything in order. Seek help if you need it. Be around positive people. Do something for yourself, even if that means taking a trip, buying something special for yourself. Seek help. Try to be positive, because you will make it. You will make it. Me, the person who couldn't handle death, I had to handle it. It's gonna knock on your door sooner or later. And if I can get through it, the way I handled death in the past, and I can get through probably the worst situation, the worst year of my life, the most catastrophic death so far in my life, with the death of someone real near and dear to me, like my mom, you all can push through it as well. You all will push through it. You all will push through it. Before I go, I'm just going to say this. Life is so full of surprises. We never know when our last day will be, or our loved ones. So with that being said, make sure you give your best and your all to people who you love. Make sure you tell them every day you love them. Make sure you hug them when and if you can. Make sure you check on them. Make sure you're there for them. Because I do know one of the reasons why I was able to let my mom go is because she went through so much. I knew she was on borrowed time. There were so many times and then she had other illnesses that came into her life beyond the mental illness. She survived cancer twice. She had this, that. She even had a defibrillator put in her chest because she collapsed in my parents' home about 15 years ago. She had so many health issues. But to look at her, you would know it. Her positive attitude, you would know it. She was always dressing her ass off, designer this, designer that, shopping, pampered by my dad, throwing dinner parties, cooking, because she was a gourmet cook by hobby. Not by profession, but by hobby. My dad wanted to put her into business to cook and bake her lovely cheesecakes. But she said, no, I just want to sell cheesecakes when I want to sell it to people who ask me on demand when I feel up to it. But I don't want to cook for a restaurant, for a business, because that would make me not love my hobby of cooking. I want to do it when I want to do it, when I want to do it on my terms, but not for a business. he offered to make her a housewife too, but she was like, no, I want to make my own money. And her money was her money, and he paid all the bills in their home. Paid for all my private schooling, paid for my college. Her money was her money. And that's why she would buy me all this designer clothes when I was growing up. And this, that. That's why I was one of the best dressed. Me and two other girls were best dressed in our high school. But her money was her money, and her money she would buy my sister and I and my son beautiful clothes. Macy's, Bloomingdale's, A&S, Abraham and Strauss, which they're all closed down now. And a lot of them became Macy's. So she would really buy nice stuff for us. So anyway, let your loved one know you love them. Be there for them. That way, when they do pass away, you did right by your loved one. You don't have to jump in the casket with them. And, one of the greatest things my mother said to me about a year before she died, she said, Charlene, I just love how you are stepping up and being there for your sister, your older sister. You give your dad and I, a break from dealing with her situation. And then she also said to me, and I thank you for the great care you're providing for me. And I'm proud of the woman that you've become. So when she said that, my day was made. I felt I had arrived. For your mother to say that to you, so I was able to let her go in peace. Plus, she also wanted to go to hospice the summer before her death. But my dad and I said, no, ma'am, no, Miss Lady. We're not gonna send you to hospice. We're gonna love on you. We're gonna keep you here, But we don't believe in sending you to hospice. We're not gonna do that. So we didn't grant that wish. So, and I was grateful. We knew she was gonna pass away. They told her dialysis center called us. It was like middle of January. Last year, earlier this year, 2024, and they said the dialysis center said they had to call the emergency room, like they'd done before, but they said they had to send her to Wake Med Hospital. I went there to check on her. She didn't look like she was in good shape, but then another doctor called later that night. They had to transport her to the big Wake Med location because the small hospital emergency center near where my parents live in North Raleigh, they don't have dialysis. But she needed dialysis, so they had to take her to the big Wake Med near downtown Raleigh. And the doctor later that night called and said, Lily, she don't have much longer. They thought she was going to pass that weekend. My dad and I went to church, and we saw her after church that Sunday. She was able to speak. Her condition exceeded our expectations. She was more alert than she was when I saw her the day before at the Wake Med Emergency Center in North Raleigh. So we knew her time was limited, and they thought she was going to pass that weekend, and a week became a few days, became a week, a couple of weeks. She had an entire additional month on this earth. And then we knew when the palliative care doctor, Dr. Kettner, called us, it was Valentine's Day. He said, her blood pressure's dropped. Come see her as soon as you can. And my son met us over there. I scooped my dad up. We went over there. And it was Valentine's Day, 2024. And God kept her around for 5 more days. They had to stop giving her dialysis because her blood pressure was so low, she couldn't take no more dialysis. So then the kidneys stopped functioning. She actually died of renal failure, and then the low blood pressure. So that's what ended up killing her. Yep. So that's what happened. But we were there every day to see her. Didn't miss a day for that entire month. And then it came to the point where with my job at the school, I just let them know, look, my mother's on her deathbed. I'll keep y'all posted. And so 2 weeks prior to her death, I just took time off from the school, made sure I had sub plans, had a sub fill in for me, because this was more important. And we were there every day, loving on her, trying to talk to her. And at first she was responsive, and then I would say the last week and a half prior to her death, she just stopped talking. you know, and really stopped. Yeah, it was last week she stopped talking, and then the blood pressure dropped, but we were able to make our amends, and we were grateful for having the extra month with her, more than the doctors originally told us. So we were grateful we were able to let go with that in our minds. So love on your loved ones, let them know you love them. Take nobody or nothing that you care for or value for granted, because you never know when your day is going to be your last. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you share this podcast, let people know about this podcast. If you're listening from a platform that lets you like the podcast, like YouTube or a format like that, please hit like. Thank you. And we will talk next week for another edition of the Brooklyn Baby Podcast. Have a wonderful, blessed, productive weekend, everyone, and stay safe. Bye.